All right, welcome back to the Hollywood Haymaker Show. This time around, it's a video edition. I'm John Hansen.
Dustyn Dubuque. Excited to be back after a few months hiatus here.
Yeah, trying up a new format with the video and seeing what you guys think of this. So we're going to talk about the Joker today. Do we want to just go right into the movie review, or
do you have any pre things to talk about Joker? Do we need to talk about the lead up to the Joker with other Jokers, or does that just come naturally later?
I think the only thing I want to say is that I'm really pleased with how the role of the Joker feels like it's become it's like Academy Award material now. I think Heath Ledger, didn't he win for Best Supporting Actor?
He did, yes.
And I think that Joaquin Phoenix has a shot at certainly getting nominated, if not winning some kind of award for this as well.
I think so.
It's great to see that a comic book character, these are characters I grew up with, and I think we all did, but, when I was a kid, all we had was maybe cartoons or very low quality movies that went straight to video, most of them.
Sure.
So to see these characters that, that I've grown up with and been fond of, and seeing them basically handled with so much care and effort is really exciting.
Yeah, it is. I think, but just because the first Batman was 1990, is that right?
89.
89, okay.
Yep, you're talking the Tim Burton.
Yep, the Tim Burton with Jack Nicholson.
Some would say the first Batman was 66.
Sure.
Adam West.
They're the Adam West. But with Joker, with Jack Nicholson, as much as we look back on that now, and it looks a little corny and kooky sometimes, at the time, I remember being young and people just like fawning over Jack Nicholson doing that.
They still do today. I hear a lot of people say that Nicholson is their favorite Joker. I like what he did. It was very over the top, very much kind of torn from the page of the comic.
Sure.
I think he was trying to translate the comic, which, he did a great job.
Yeah.
But I love that they are treating the character now with much more realism. I think Heath Ledger did a pretty good job, and then Joaquin. Honestly, I think he's given the best Joker performance I've ever seen.
Wow, interesting. Hot take.
Well, in this film, they did a great job of walking that line of both the real world, treating the character like a real world character, and making him relatable and making him feel like he fits into our real world.
Right.
But they also stayed true to the spirit of the comic book character. You've got over 80 years of history with this character, and I felt like they stayed very true to the spirit.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, we'll talk a little more when we get into it. So I guess this is a movie I'll let you handle the opening plot and synopsis and stuff, because this is more your world.
Sure. Yeah, and we will go into spoilers with this.
Oh yes.
So if you've not seen the movie yet, you should definitely see the movie first.
Yeah, come back and watch this after you've seen it.
Because I mean, obviously, we certainly recommend you do see it. It's a very good movie. But yeah, so the premise is basically this man, Arthur Fleck, who he lives in a small apartment with his mother, and he's trying to get by. He works as a clown. He works for like a agency that if you need to hire a clown for whatever, you can call up this agency and hire clowns, and he's one of these clowns. So in the opening, you see him outside of a furniture store. They're like having a going out of business sale, and he's the guy out on the street holding the sign, trying to get people's attention and get them into the store. And he ends up getting mugged and beaten up. And that's where it starts. I mean, you start to basically see the challenges he's facing as an individual in this world. He's maybe a little bit mentally, what's the word?
I would say mentally unstable is a good one.
Unstable, sure.
Because he shows him getting beat up with the sign. His coworkers, the other clown coworkers, kind of understand that he's weird, and they're kind of like picking on him the whole time. And the only one who doesn't is the small person, because he can't, because he actually gets picked on worse. So they actually have a mutual bond. So it's kind of what you're understanding is that he's socially inept.
Right.
And a little mentally unstable at times. Because there is times, the one thing I liked about the movie in the beginning too is there is times where it's not yeah, he's awkward and weird, but there's times where he's not, where he's maybe a little weird, but he's just being a normal person riding the subway or having a conversation. Even though he might be weird, he's not like over the top and acting too outrageous.
Yeah, there's a great scene where he's riding on I don't know if it was a subway or bus or something, but there was a little boy in the seat in front of him looking at him, and he was kind of making some funny faces at the kid and making the kid laugh, and actually was doing a good job of socializing with that little boy.
Very.
But then the mother turns around and is basically like, leave my child alone.
Right.
So it's, even when he's making a good effort, it's like society's not letting him.
Sometimes. Right. Well, and I guess Gotham at the time is seen, because this is what, early 1980s kind of is when it's set.
Yeah, it's supposed to be set in the 80s.
And it's very New York City feel. So him being even a little, socially awkward in New York doesn't go very far, because people don't really care. And they're just going to tell you not to talk to their kids and stay away as much as possible.
Right.
So, yeah, so that's interesting. And then the next part was when we start learning his home life with his mother. Mm-hmm. He's living with his mother, and she's very enamored with
Thomas Wayne.
Thomas Wayne, thank you. And she watches the late night TV show every night, which is kind of like the spoof of Johnny Carson, but it's Robert De Niro, and she has this like very ritualistic life that she leads with her son that feels like he needs to take care of her at all times.
And they watch the show together every night, and there's a sequence in the film where he imagines that he's on the show, and it shows that he does get lost in fantasy at times, and it also lets you know that the movie, not everything you're seeing is necessarily
real. Yeah. And then that's where you kind of learn that he, because he's watching TV all the time, and he's a clown. He wants to be a stand-up comedian. Mm-hmm. He imagines himself on TV. He wants to be a celebrity and stuff. But it's hard when you're him, because and they kind of also say throughout the movie that he's not funny, but he thinks he's funny.
And him wanting to be a stand-up comedian is taken from the comic. The Joker, part of his origin was that he was a failed stand-up comedian. Okay. They've done different origins for him. They've told his origin different times, but one of the popular origin stories for him was that he was a stand-up comedian that was a failed stand-up comedian.
Okay, good to know. So then what? He's pretty much. Oh, and the other kind of big part about it is, again, I think this is the one thing in the trailer they show, is that he has this. We don't really know if it's a real disease or not, where he can't control his laughter, and he has this laminated card he gives people to explain to them that he can't control this, and it's this function that...
I took it as...
Did you take it as he actually has it?
I didn't question that.
Really? Yeah. I did. I started to when he got off his medication, and he was still doing it, and he was doing it a little differently. It seemed more evil when he couldn't get his medication anymore, and it wasn't as... What do you say? Over the top. So it's kind of like one of the things I started to question him, like, is this real, or is this just what he wants to do?
Oh, okay.
Like, does he take it as a tick to either make the situation awkward or make it funny, or I don't know.
It's presented as though he doesn't react normally to situations. If he's stressed or feeling, different things, he might laugh instead. And it's something that he can't control. I didn't question that, I guess.
Okay, yeah. I just kind of started to, just because there's a part, kind of a big turning point in the movie. Again, it has the social class aspect to it. He's it's New York City. The billionaires are in control, I guess, if that's what you want to say. And he eventually loses his funding for his medicine. He had a therapist that he would see, or one provided to him. That funding got cut, so we couldn't see her anymore either. So that kind of adds to the spiraling down the drain, where he was staying on a level path, kind of. That was just kind of the beginning of, the craziness that he would turn into. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's kind of the plot without the spoilers so far.
Right. So then, at one point in the story, he does get a handgun from one of the other clowns, and that's in response to him having been beaten up in the opening scene of the movie. One of the other clowns gives him this handgun, and tells him to use it for protection. He is caught with it on one of his jobs.
Yep.
So he gets fired. A lot happens to him.
Right. Well, especially after that person who gave him the gun, who told him it was for protection, later rats him out and said that he stole the gun from him. Mm-hmm. And that's why he, has the gun, and he shouldn't have brought it to a children's hospital. But, but yeah, so like that adds up to is like he thought he was his friend helping him out, and really his friend turned on him pretty quick to make sure he saved his own job and not Arthur's.
Right. So yeah, so it's just he finds himself on a subway ride, and there's these three guys that are harassing a woman, and he starts laughing again uncontrollably, like as he's been doing.
Yep.
So they turn their attention to him, and they end up beating him up, and he ends up pulling his gun out and shooting all three of them.
Yep.
This sequence I felt was based on the situation that happened back in the 80s with Bernie Getz.
Yep. I've heard that a couple times.
Yeah.
Yep.
It made it real world and relatable. Bernie Getz was a guy that was living in New York back in the 80s, and he was frequently mugged. He was working, I think, with computers or some type of technology, very expensive at the time, very large at the time as well. So he would be traveling around with large, expensive items that people could clearly see on him, and he was frequently being mugged, and he got himself an illegal handgun. And he was riding on a subway. He was confronted by four guys, and he shot them all.
Yep.
So it made the film seem very real world again.
Yep.
I like that they're telling this character's story, who we know from comic books, but they're doing it in this very real world fashion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess that's where I'll ask the beginning of the first questions. Okay, so I like the fact that it was set in this real world idea and stuff, but then in the end, it's still a comic book movie. So when I'm sitting here, and again, maybe it's it's an origin story, but it's impossible to forget everything that's been in the canon until now for me. So when I watch this and I see Arthur as this like kind of real person who has these problems, who is, doing these things that turns them into the Joker, I then think, how does this normal person get to where he's going to be to fight or to be a opponent of a guy like Batman? It's, where you take Batman is also set in a very realistic world in general, but because he uses gadgets and all that type of stuff. But in the end, I look at it like, something real versus something not. Is that odd to say? But it's just a thought.
For me, like I said earlier, I felt it really walked both those lines. I thought they really did stay true to the comic character. They do have Bruce Wayne in this film.
Yeah.
He is he's a little boy at this point in the story, and we haven't really quite got to that point of the plot yet. But
sure, we'll probably go.
We'll get to it.
We'll get around.
Yeah, but he is in the story, so there is some references there, and I do feel like they do kind of start to put some of the pieces in place, as far as you can then use your imagination to see where their relationship would go into the future.
Sure. And then that, I guess, because Bruce Wayne is in the film, there's one scene with him and Joker. The other thing that I do like the movie, but I do have some things. Joaquin can maybe, the youngest he can pass for is what? 40, maybe 35, just an old looking 35. Bruce Wayne's 8. That means when he turns to be Batman at what, 21? Joker's in his almost 60s, and then you look back of like Heath Ledger, who's obviously a younger man who could pass for older with the makeup and stuff. But it's just thinking of like the time. But again, that's small things.
You're not the first one that I've heard complain about the age difference.
The age difference is a little odd
between Joker and Bruce Wayne. I was fine with it. I don't know. I guess I was so into the story that I didn't really think too much about it. This is their version. Obviously, in the comic they're probably a little closer in age, but
I would think so, I guess.
But I think for this story, I thought it worked really well.
Yeah, it did. My only thing is now is the next one. So we have our Batman, which is Robert Pattinson. So he has to come out with one. Joaquin has said this doesn't mean anything now, but he has said that this is it. This is the only one he's going to do, which, of course, we don't believe it until we actually see that he never comes back.
I hope they don't do a sequel just because the film, to me, really stands on its own, and I don't want him to
so what about, say, you know, Robert Pattinson has his next Batman movie in a year or two.
It should be its own thing.
Okay.
Separate.
But then what happens the next time Joker and Batman collide? Because you'd assume Robert Pattinson has signed up for a couple movies.
It'll be a new actor. Okay. It'll be a new
story and new everything. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think this film should just be left to stand on its own.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't think they should try to tie it in.
Okay.
Because I just worry it would ruin this movie. I thought this movie was really good just as it is.
As it is. All right. All right. Cool. All right. Where are we at next? Well, we learn a little bit more, again, on unraveling the layers, going back to Bruce Wayne and his father. Mm-hmm. We learn that his mother is sending letters to Bruce's dad again, Thomas. It's like saying, like, Joker or Arthur's your son.
Right.
And you need to give us money. We're poor. Please help us out. And she's been doing this for what we learn is probably like 30 years.
Right. So she is claiming that her son Arthur is the illegitimate son of Thomas Wayne.
Yes.
The billionaire Thomas Wayne, and that they are basically left as, you know, outcasts and have been discarded. Because
he's billionaire and stuff happens. Why would you want to?
He didn't want to be involved.
Right.
So
then we get Arthur figures this out. Mm-hmm. He reads one of the letters finally, and so then he's trying to track down, you know, Thomas and Bruce, and trying to figure this out. And they're telling him that it's not true, that it's all made up, and his mom's pretty much crazy, and that he needs to go to Arkham Asylum and learn that his mom was there for a long time, and all that type of stuff. So that's where it goes. So it sounds like you took the laughing at face value. So did you take this at face value too? Like, when he got there and learned that, okay, she maybe is crazy? Because, I mean, they say he's adopted. I mean, he has the adoption letter in the portfolio. But do you believe that that's all true, or do you believe Thomas Wayne, because he's a billionaire, planted and faked all that?
And this is one thing I really loved about this story, because in the comic, they never fully fleshed out Joker's origin. It was always a little bit ambiguous. And when I first heard that they were going to make this movie, I thought, why would you do that? Why would you make a Joker origin movie? It's going to ruin some of the mystique of the character.
Okay, cool.
So for me, this idea that his mother is telling him that he's the illegitimate son of Thomas Wayne, the billionaire, and Thomas Wayne is telling him that his mother is insane and lying to him.
Right.
I don't know which one is true.
Okay.
And I like that.
Yeah.
And it added to the weight of the situation that this young man is in.
Yeah.
I say young man, but
yeah, right.
He's, you know, we talked about he's not all there mentally, and now he's dealing with this stressful situation of not knowing if he can trust his own mother, who's been the one person in his life
that he can trust.
Right. So it's a very stressful situation.
Sure.
And so I actually really appreciated that they did that with the story.
Yeah, you know, again, me not being in the canon as much, I originally, when I walked out of the movie, took it as fact. Like, I kind of went with it. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I hear other people talk, and they say, like, well, Thomas Wayne's a billionaire. He could fake all of them documents, and nobody would have any idea.
Right.
And, you know, that's an interesting concept. I guess I never thought of it. While I was in the movie, I just want to say, when I was there, I took it as, okay, she's crazy. I mean, she doesn't really help her own story. But she is pretty out there.
Now that you've thought about it, you realize either could be true.
Either could be true.
Yeah, and I think that's what's great about it, because then it does still keep some of that mystique of the character, too.
Sure.
And
so I guess then the other thing that we have to talk about, he has a neighbor, ZZ, played by ZZ Beetz from Deadpool, that they have this little moment, again, a moment of him being a person, kind of, in the beginning, where he gets on the elevator to go up to his apartment. She gets on with her young son or daughter, and the daughter's irritating her, and she does the fake, like, oh my gosh, this is annoying, shoot me. And he does it to her, and they have this little moment of like, okay, that's cute. Mm-hmm. So then later in the movie, she knocks on his door, and they kind of they connect a little bit, and then they start slowly, like, kind of forming a relationship, kind of.
Right.
Where, like, she goes and watches him do stand-up comedy, and she's with his mom at the hospital and all these things.
Yep.
And then eventually we figure out that this is all in his brain. They don't have this relationship. Did you know that? Or were you taken off?
I was surprised. She comes home into her apartment and he's there, and
which is a great scene.
Yeah, it's a great scene. She
does not know who he is, or she knows who he is, but
she knows his name, but she's upset that he's there.
Actually, she only kind of knows his name too. That's the reason why I knew it was all in his head is because the first time she went. So we have to assume the first time they connect in the elevators, the first time they've met. Maybe they've seen each other. She uses his name. She goes, "Hi, Arthur," and my first thought was, he didn't introduce himself. So like that was my first thing. I'm like, this isn't real. There's no way. I actually amazingly kind of caught onto that, and also because the stand-up comedy scene, she was just kind of thrown in, like it was kind of cut away. It was way at the end, and I was like, okay, I think he's kind of crazy here. The only scene that almost got me was the hospital one, where like she kisses him on the forehead and stuff, and I was like, oh, maybe it's real. I was like, no way. I'm like, she's a pretty what I would say, if it turned out to be real, she's a pretty what's a good word? Confident female to have one little interaction on the elevator and then immediately knock on his door and be like, hey, we should hang out.
Well, if I remember correctly, he knocks on her door, and it was right after he did the killing on the subway. He comes and knocks on her door, and she opens it, and he just kisses her really hard.
Oh, is that before?
And
okay.
In
my head it was after, but I could be wrong.
I thought that was the next time they saw each other. And I did think that seemed
excessive.
Yeah,
a little heavy right at the beginning.
It seemed a little much. I got what they were going for. That when he acted out these killings on the subway, that he felt powerful and confident.
Sure, so he just did it.
It gave him the confidence to go over and knock on her door and kiss her.
Right.
So I got what they were going for, but I didn't question the reality of it. I thought it seemed
almost too good to be.
It seemed unrealistic.
It did, which is good. It was,
but it's a movie, so they can do that sometimes.
I get it.
So then later, when it turned out that he was imagining his relationship with her, I thought, oh, that's even more perfect.
Yeah, and I did. And again, one thing I didn't like about the movie was the fact that they had to show me that she wasn't there. I mean, I think that was pretty well brought across when she realized that he was in the living room. Mm-hmm. And then of course Todd Phillips had to show like the 30 seconds of she wasn't there. I'm like, you don't need that. I
was fine with it.
My brain works.
It took several seconds.
I know, but I'm always one of them people, I don't like when movies dumb things down like I'm an idiot. I totally got it.
I'll tell you why I liked it, because it allowed us to go back to those moments and relive those moments when he's there at the hospital with his mother and he imagines that she's there supporting him, but in reality,
but she's not.
In reality, he didn't have a supporter.
Right.
So I felt like I got an emotional response to seeing those scenes again without her in them.
Sure.
So I like those scenes.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. So then really that leads us to the finale where he bombs on stage, but again, he's made us believe that he did an amazing job on his first stand-up comedy set, but he can't stop laughing because that's his tick. And he becomes kind of a hit on Robert De Niro's late night show. They show it continuously. They think it's funny, and they start kind of making fun of him.
That was probably the one thing in the movie that I thought was the most unbelievable. I mean, I forgive it. I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to advance the plot in such a way that he ends up on that show.
Right.
But I thought it was unrealistic that a show like The Tonight Show would be airing a clip of a stand-up comedian that didn't do well from a nightclub without their permission. First of all, it's completely unlikely.
It was tough, and the fact that they aired it they aired it all week.
I mean, stand-up comedians doing poorly in a nightclub is not uncommon. This is many stand-up comedians. It's their first time on stage. They're not going to do well, and you certainly wouldn't embarrass them on national television for that.
Right. But they're also doing it because he won't stop laughing. But then they do make fun of his jokes because the jokes aren't good. Again, the whole point of the movie is that he's not funny. And he's not.
I guess you could compare it to there are shows like Tosh.0, for example.
Sure.
Where he does take YouTube videos and he does show them videos that.
But also take the time though. This is 2012 when we're doing that. We're not doing it. Is Johnny Carson doing that?
That's what I'm saying.
1979.
It was a little harder to buy that somebody like a Carson would do it, but.
And the fact that later when he does get to the studio, at this point, Joker has murdered another person, and he's dyed his hair green. He's put the makeup on again, and that's how he shows up. Even though people are in the streets rioting, wearing clown masks, they want to put him on TV and think he'll be okay. And I'm like, nope. Nobody puts that guy on TV and lets him sit on the couch next to Robert De Niro when he's probably the most famous person in television. That's kind of what we're led to believe, at least in New York. And so, that's a little. I agree with you that maybe of all the movie,
it was them trying to advance the plot in a way to get him onto the show, which I understand that, and so I'm forgiving of it. But there was some things that were maybe a little unrealistic to get him onto that show.
I think that was probably the weakest part, was to get him. But him being on the show was very, very well done.
Yeah, I thought De Niro's acting was a little weak in this movie.
It's De Niro in 2019.
Right.
I think we're all to that point, aren't we?
Yeah, I think he needs to retire. I love De Niro. He's been one of my favorite actors of all time. And the work he did back in the 70s, 80s, even the 90s, amazing.
Sure.
Some of my favorite characters of all time.
In the last 15 years?
Not so much.
It's been rough.
Yeah, so they put him in this film. I felt like they put him in there as maybe like a little homage to Scorsese and some of the films that they did together back in the 70s.
I was gonna bring that out now. Let's not parallel Taxi Driver in this movie at all, because that's what it's doing.
Taxi Driver, but also The King of Comedy.
Yep.
These are films that Scorsese made with De Niro back in the late 70s, I think, maybe early 80s for King of Comedy. Might have been early 80s.
Yeah, I think so.
So I felt like De Niro being there was meant to pay homage to those films, because I was thinking about it, like, this film it really felt, my experience watching it, I was trying to compare it, what film I would compare it to, and I think you got to go back all the way to the 70s or 80s to find something to compare it to.
I mean, I immediately, halfway through, I was like...
They don't make movies like this anymore.
Right, halfway... Well, they do, but so that's my next conversation I'm going to bring up next. So... I was Taxi Driver and Kings of Comedy very much when I got towards the end, but like throughout midway through, I'm like, this is Taxi Driver a lot.
Oh yeah.
So this is my other question about the movie. So we have Todd Phillips, a pretty big name director who's out of comedy doing dramas now, and Joaquin Phoenix. So this isn't a small movie. It's the Joker. I don't know what the budget was, but I'm sure it was $100 million minimum. Kind of telling a story that indie movies do a lot. Not exactly, but like the grittiness, the griminess, the fact that this character is like this kind of unlikable guy that is kind of the lead character in the whole movie. Those movies do exist. It's just they don't exist on the scale that this one does. Like if you took the name Joker off and took the Joker part out and made the whole movie around something else like fictitious and did the same character, same ideas, it doesn't appeal to the mass audience because it's not Joker.
Right. It would still work.
It probably would.
That's one thing I love about this movie. It really works as just a story about a guy, or it can also be the comic book character that the Joker. It works as both. So.
Sure.
So you don't have to be familiar with the Joker character going into this movie.
That's probably the really good part about this movie is that you don't, like, even the little, the hints of Batman and the lore there, are minimal and very well laid out. Like, I again don't know Batman well. I understand what the Asylum is. I understand the point of it.
You said Batman well. Yeah, that's a character from The Tick.
Is it? And so, like, it is good in that regard. So then the ending is he shoots De Niro on TV, blows his brains out, and gets arrested. Obviously, everybody sees it. But so there's already this upheaval in the streets of New York that the city's dirty, there's these giant rats, and the billionaires don't care. So they have latched on to Joker, which they already knew about through newspapers because they said this guy in clown makeup killed 3 dudes. So they've already the city has pretty much got behind this guy. And then eventually, at the end he gets kind of away from the cops in a car accident and he kind of stands in the crowd with everyone. That's kind of the end. Yeah,
some of the people wearing Joker masks drove a vehicle into the police car to get him out of there.
Yep.
So they basically the rioters in the streets became like a gang that wanted to support him.
Yeah. So here's my other question. Again, me and you did a podcast for quite a while. You do not like unlikable main characters. Like, I've heard you say that before. This guy...
Let me break down that statement. I don't like unlikable characters.
Yeah.
Well,
so
if they're unlikable, then...
But this guy's a terrible person.
Inherently,
this guy's a terrible person. But you can like unlikable people. This guy's a terrible person. He's murdering people in the streets. Yep. He's bashing people's brains in, and he's killing one of the most famous people on television, but yet everybody thinks he's awesome as they ride in the streets.
Well,
I find it. I at the end was like, why would I root for this person? I didn't. He shoots De Niro in the face for making fun of him on TV. My first thought was, I did get pulled out a little bit at the end, because up till that point, I'm like, I can't believe I'm kind of behind this. I likened it to like The Devil's Rejects when I watched that. They take these three people that in a movie already they prove that they were mass murderers, and then in the second film they kind of made them out to be like maybe kind of decent people, even though we know they're not, but you kind of root for them and for a little while. This movie, why am I rooting for the Joker? Because he got beat up a couple times and now he's shooting people, and I don't know. It's just an interesting conversation. Like that at the end, I was like, I'm not cheering in the streets for this guy that just shot a guy on television that a majority of people like. Interesting thought.
Yeah, well, they say you shouldn't judge somebody until you've walked a mile in their shoes. And I think because we spend the movie with Arthur and getting to know him and his circumstances, I think it does help him become more empathetic. But if you're asking about the rioters in the streets and why those characters in the film would get behind somebody who just murdered somebody on national television, I think it speaks to the mindset of society.
Sure.
And there are people that would root for that. There are people that do like.
I'm not going to deny that there
person.
wouldn't be, but if you liken it to today,
I mean, Charles Manson had followers that worshipped him.
Yeah, he had 100. He didn't have a street that looked like it had 2,000 people in it.
Maybe not, but I do think that those type of people do exist. Even, here's a perfect example. When there was that movie theater shooting,
right
at the last Batman movie, Dark Knight.
Yep.
I forget the kid's name, and actually, I'm happy to forget his name.
Yeah.
But there was a girl that dyed her hair the same color as his.
Okay,
and spoke out and was trying to show him support and was writing him letters and things like this.
And there's like that with
one on YouTube and one on TV.
Yep.
So there are people that exist like that.
Sure.
Now there might not be 2,000 in one neighborhood, but they do exist. So I agree. That's the point of this story.
Sure. I see. That's where, like, I don't know. That's like 15 minutes. I was like, I don't like this guy. Just because he gets made fun of, I don't really pass that as, he's, and he does, and the part we missed is he is mad at his mother because he believes he is adopted, and he kills her too. He suffocates her in a bed while she's like in practically a coma almost, or whatever she is. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. It's funny. He's not even an anti-hero. He's a bad guy. I mean, the Joker is a villain for a reason.
I think
so, but it's just funny. I'm feeling empathetic for a guy who gets beat up a couple times and gets made fun of his whole life. So he should. It's okay. I understand why he's shooting people.
Well, I think the film did a good job of making the viewer understand why he's doing what he does.
Sure.
I think that's why it's such a good movie. You understand his motivations. You might not agree with him. You might not agree with his motivations, but you understand where this individual is coming from. This is a film that paints a portrait. There are people like this in the world.
Sure.
And so I feel it's an important film. It's a film people should see and talk about, certainly.
Yeah, I do give it that. I don't like it as much as you did, but it's very good. It's one of the movies that I thought a lot about, which is good. You know how many movies we see that go in our brain for about an hour and then they're never thought of again until, somebody brings it up and you go, I saw that. I don't remember a thing about it, but I saw it. Mm-hmm. So I give it that. It's stayed with me. I've thought about it a lot. That's good.
Yeah.
I had some hangups with it, but in the end, and it looks great. It's the gritty and griminess of New York is super nice to look, or Gotham.
Yeah.
It's super nice to look at.
I was surprised that Todd Phillips made this film because the other films he's done, the films I know him for are films like Road Trip and Old School and Starsky and
Hangover.
Hangover, yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people enjoy that movie. It's a comedy. It's funny. But
the other two aren't that he did.
Yeah, he tries to be funny usually.
And I didn't see his first like serious movie, War Dogs. Did you ever watch that?
No, I didn't know that was him.
Miles Teller and Jonah Hill.
Yeah,
I didn't watch it because it did not look interesting, so I didn't watch it. But yeah,
so but that movie came out and I didn't hear anybody talking about it.
Same.
So I just figured it wasn't worth watching.
So I guess I don't know how much you've read about Todd Phillips in the last like month and like some of the interviews he's been doing. But the whole reason why he's doing serious movies now is because he says he can't do comedies anymore because of like nothing can be funny in the world anymore. So like that's why he's doing serious stuff. And that's the reason why some people are taking Joker and like saying how he talks and like he's like, so it's like Todd Phillips kind of like doing the anti thing where he's like, this guy isn't funny and now we can't be funny type of thing. So take that with what you will, with whatever you believe.
Yeah, I don't know, but I was definitely very surprised that he made a film of this caliber and this quality,
Sure.
Just based on the other films that I've seen that he's done. When they first announced that they were making this Joker movie and they had him attached as the writer and the director, I said right away, I don't expect it to be very good. It just felt like a cash grab.
Yes, you did.
It wasn't until I saw the trailer that I realized what they were going for with it. And I was thinking, I hope it lives up to my expectations based on this trailer because it looked like a really good trailer.
Yeah.
And the film really did. But no, I thought he really showed a lot of maturation as a filmmaker.
Sure.
With this film. I was very surprised that it was a Todd Phillips film. And I like some of the visual storytelling he was using in it too. Like when Arthur would come home from work each day, you'd see him climbing this huge staircase, and I think it was designed to kind of show how much weight he carries each day, just trying to go to work, just trying to get by. You know, he's climbing these stairs, and you just watch him going up each of the steps, and the buildings are just so much bigger than him, and it makes him look like he's being oppressed by the city. And at the end, when he starts killing people, and he's starting to give into, I think, some of the violent emotions he's had. He tells his therapist in one scene that he only has negative thoughts, you know, because of the way the world's treating him and things. When he starts to finally let go and give into those negative thoughts and starts killing people, you see him coming down the stairs and he's dancing.
Yeah, it's a great, probably the best scene in the movie is the down the stairs dancing scene. That's a great movie.
You feel him letting go and releasing and coming down the stairs, and it's a much easier path for him. So, just, you know, things like that I just thought were the mark of a talented filmmaker. Yeah. That I got to give it to Todd Phillips. Good job, and I'll be looking forward to seeing what he does next.
So it takes one movie after a bunch of bad Todd Phillips movies. Huh?
It takes one excellent movie for me to want to see what he does.
It'll be interesting to see what his next go at is after a pretty mass amount of mediocre movies that he's produced.
Right.
Yeah. And then to do one pretty good one. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think that about covered everything, right? Do you have any other last? Oh, and the other thing is probably the other one thing is, you know, and I believe it's the media overdoing it, is people like having extra police at movie theaters and stuff because this movie was going to be so violent and cause this outrage. Yeah, I'm not saying there's not a couple acts of violence in this movie, but John Wick exists, and if you're blaming Joker for being too violent, then John Wick movies shouldn't be allowed to exist because...
Yeah, I heard something, they put out a notice that they were concerned about there was going to be theater shootings
and stuff, yeah.
And there were none. So...
I know.
That's good.
That's good. I'm glad that, you know, a couple deaths in a movie, like we can't... Rambo's in theaters right now. Let's all remember that. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's more than about 4 killings in that movie. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's just... that was overdone. So, I thought they did a good job with the R rating, too. Like, you know, so far with Deadpool and Wolverine, when they've thrown the R rating on the movies, they've been very violent movies. This movie has a couple moments of violence, but it's not like Joker's here killing 50 people at a time and trying to like that's not the point, which is good. No, I'm glad we've pulled away from that.
I think there's something to be said though about how realistic the violence is, and sometimes one killing can be more effective in a film than 1,000. Sure. You know, you see Rambo with a big gun exploding people, and it's almost comical in a way, but when you see somebody, you know, beat somebody to death and there's no soundtrack and the camera is unflinching and it's just matter of fact. Right. Sometimes that can be almost more disturbing.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I get it.
But, so even though there are only a couple of killings in this film.
Yeah, they're very realistic.
Very visceral, and you will respond to them for sure.
For sure. But yeah, overall, I liked it. That was pretty good.
Yeah, great movie.
So
see it Well, hopefully you already saw it.
Yeah, you
just
should.
spoiled the whole thing.
If you watch this and didn't see it, I guess you're gonna enjoy it still. But yeah, this is our first video pod. Hopefully, we're gonna do more once we get some more movies.
Tell us what you think of the new format, and that's what keeps us going is hearing from you guys and hearing your support and that you're enjoying the show. So please email or comment on the video, and hopefully see you again soon.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.